Hello again, everyone. I'm Lucas Berry, and you're watching Train Time on the New River Network. You know, as we begin 2026, I can't help but think about 2025 a little bit, and the year that was. Of course, it was the first full year of this program's existence, and over the course of the year, we had a chance to show off some pretty cool trains, if you ask me. From Foreign Power here with the Canadian National locomotives on that grain train from Indiana, to CSX's Heritage units, honoring the Western Maryland, the Monon, the RF&P, Conrail, the Seaboard Coastline, the Atlantic Coastline, the Family Line system. All those things really added up. Now, of course, there were the humdrum 2 locomotives, 100-some loaded coal cars, and the 5 locomotives on an empty coal train. You're going to get that, right? That you can, not every train you catch is going to have something remarkable on it. That's just the fact. And truth be told, I like catching the humdrum. I do. Because I take the approach that, you know what, at some point that's going to become a lost thing, right? Those locomotives will be retired, those locomotives will be rebuilt, and for me, having that documentation means something. So I love every train I catch. It doesn't matter to me what it is, I'm happy to catch a train. I don't get out there that much, so you better be happy with what you get, right? So with that, we're going to take a look back at some of the things that I caught that did stand out over the course of 2025. We'll go in order by which these trains were filmed. So we'll start in February and we'll end up just a few days before 2026 with the last entry on our list. So the first entry on that list is Amtrak's Dash 8, pulling the Amtrak Cardinal. This locomotive was one of 20 that were built in the early 1990s. As Amtrak faced a power shortage, they were retiring a lot of older locomotives, and the locomotives that were set to replace those older ones long term were not finished yet. But Amtrak still had a railroad to run. So what do? Well, General Electric adapted a freight locomotive to passenger service. And what came of that was the P32-8. For passenger, 32 for 3,200 horsepower, and Dash 8 for the locomotive model number. And that's what you get. These things roamed the rails of the country for a while until the new P42s, locomotives that became the long-term face of Amtrak, until they're now being replaced by the newer Siemens Chargers. When they came on the scene, and thing is, you can still see Dash 8s out there. They're mostly used in yard service, or in a pinch, they can lead a road train, like they did this time, back in February. Ironically enough, it was pulling a new Siemens Charger, and the new locomotive, barely a year old at that point, was the one that had a problem. The 30-some-year-old locomotive ran just fine. And I like Dash 8s. I think they're really interesting. Particularly when you see it looks like a freight locomotive, except it says Amtrak on the side and it's geared for passenger service. So to have a chance to catch that in Thurman was really, really special, and I actually ran into a group of rail fans, and you'll see them in the shot, who chased this thing all the way from Charleston to Lipton Forge, Virginia. I didn't. I stayed in Thurman. But you know what? It was a heck of a catch, and a great way to start our video. Let's get going. We'll move ahead now to April with 2 Canadian National locomotives rolling underneath the New River Gorge Bridge on the CSX grain train from Indiana. I don't know how they got there, but I'm glad I got it. Seeing Foreign Power underneath the symbol of West Virginia is incredible. skip ahead to August now and we'll stay underneath the New River Gorge Bridge for train C895, a loaded coal train from Princeton, Indiana to Newport News, Virginia, with a very special leader, CSX number 1871, the Atlantic Coastline Heritage Journey. For me, it's always fun to see colors that don't belong in coal service in West Virginia in coal service in West Virginia, like the 1871. The Atlantic Coastline was not a coal hauling railroad, so to see it around here in coal service on a coal drag is quite entertaining, and it's always a thrill to get it, like I said, underneath one of the symbols of West Virginia. August, and again we find ourselves awaiting a heritage unit, although this one is a bit more familiar to our region. CSX 1852, the Western Maryland unit, was leading M652, which at this point was in the final days of being routed over the former Chesapeake and Ohio before returning to its original routing via the former Clinchfield trackage that had been destroyed by Hurricane Helene. M652 came out of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and will terminate in Russell, Kentucky. Seeing Western Maryland colors around here would at one point have been considered quite common. The WN was part of the chassis system, and while the three roads that made up the chassis system, the B&O, C&O, along with the Western Maryland, were all technically independent, it was operated as one combined road, and motive power could be sent anywhere. So wouldn't it have been a complete shock to have come to Thurman in, let's say, 1975, and seen a Western Maryland diesel leading a manifest just like we're doing now in 2025? Sometimes it's not the locomotives that make a train stand up, but rather the rolling stock on the train. Such is the case here with Coal Train C209, loads from Shelby, Kentucky to Newport News, Virginia. While a solo locomotive leading a coal train instead of two locomotives up front is always going to be a shock to me, it's what's behind the engine that lands this catchier. It's a track geometry boxcar. It's a CSX-owned boxcar that has equipment inside to measure the rails and make sure everything is in good order and no rails are unfit for service. It does this by shining a laser on the rail, and if you look closely you can see it. If they do happen to catch something wrong, it goes into the computer system so the problem can be addressed. What a way to end 2025. This is my last outing of the year. I was here to catch CSX's Monon Heritage Unit on R.J. Corman, and we'll get to that in a future episode. So, a Heritage Unit and a Geometry Boxcar. That's a pretty good way to end the year, if you ask me.
6894 clear. Normandy, main
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the program and would like to watch past episodes, I invite you to do so on our Facebook page. You can just watch us at New River Network. You can also check us out on YouTube at New River Network. You can check us out at watchnrn.com, on our Roku channel, just search up New River Network, and on cable here in Fayette County. Channel 4 on the Plateau, Channel 17 down in the valley. So, for the New River Network, I'm Lucas Barrett. Not any good at any time. It's train time.